Welcome, everyone, to the Microsoft 365 Community Conference sponsor webinar series. I'm Ella Fernandez, Head of Connections at BTechly, and today we're joined by our sponsor, RSM. In today's session, we'll be exploring extending customer service with Microsoft 365 Copilot Studio. But before we get started, here are a few reminders. To join the live Q&A, you'll need to register for the webinar. If you haven't registered yet, simply scan the QR code on your screen or visit btechly.com, select today's session, and enter your business email address. Once you're registered, our team will add you to the calendar invite, which includes a link to join the Q&A chat at the end of the session. Please note that the Q&A is not live streamed. Join us at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference this April 21st to 23rd in Orlando. Register now by scanning the QR code or head to nextgen365events.com and use the discount code SAVE150 to get $150 off on your registration. Apply for the Microsoft 365 Community Grant Program built to help small businesses and nonprofit to accelerate their AI journey with hands-on learning, expert guidance, and financial support to attend M365Con 26. Scan the QR code on the screen or visit change3e.com/grants. And of course, please like, subscribe, and follow both BTechly and the Microsoft 365 Community Conference. Without further ado, let's get started and enjoy today's learning session.
Welcome, everyone, to today's session as we talk through and develop some understanding around Microsoft 365 Copilot Studio and how it can help with extending customer service. As we take a look today, just to kind of level set of what we're going to talk about here for the next hour is really focusing on where customer service is today, highlight some of the information around contact centers and some of the challenges as well as opportunities, focus in on that experience with Copilot Studio. Pretty excited for a live demo of two different channels, specifically around voice as well as chat. And then we'll talk through some next steps. If you do have any questions, obviously feel free to save them to the end, or if you want to go ahead and leverage the comment section, certainly welcome to do that. First of all, I'm joined by a colleague, Chris. Chris, I'll let you do your introduction and then I'll do mine.
Hi, Pat. Thanks. Everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Chris Driscoll. I am a solution architect here at RSM, specializing in all things Microsoft Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. Looking forward to giving you the demo today and also monitoring the chat throughout the session. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Chris and I work closely together. Pat Peterson, I'm a MVP and MCT focused in on the content and collaboration side. I will be at the Microsoft 365 conference next week. So if you're around, please feel free to come and check out booth 600 where RSM will be. With that, as we take a look, I support organizations as they're moving and transitioning to contact center solutions, and specifically the Microsoft solution, which is powered behind the scenes by Copilot Studio. Real quickly, we'll just run through two items of RSM. If you haven't heard of RSM, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary, so we're really proud of that. With that as well, we are throughout the United States, North America, as well as have a global footprint. And then the last item here to think about is from a partnership with Microsoft. We're very strong connected with Microsoft across all the solution areas and have a lot of advanced specializations that go with it. So generally, if you need something in the Microsoft realm or even any other technology, RSM can certainly help. So let's dive into some of the customer service pieces of it. So as we take a look at customer service, it's without a doubt that customer service is changing rapidly here over the last couple of years as we think about where that's going, how users are interacting with it. So from a services perspective, most of you probably can fit into this, but from a services perspective, is that customer expectations are higher. When I call in, when I chat something, when I leverage SMS for a change of an airline ticket or a hotel stay or something else in a personal life, my expectation is that I need to get service quicker and faster, and have a response a little bit, more timely. And so with that comes the other piece, which is the burnout for a lot of those agents. What I always like to say is when we think about customer service overall, a lot of times customer service is, if the experience is positive, then your consumers or your customers have a positive experience. However, when we think about what that really means is sometimes it means that an agent or a human agent analyst is having a bad day. And so that can impact the customer satisfaction at the end. So the other piece here is we think about from a decision-making perspective, that 87% of disconnected data. That's really a large amount. When I think about organizations and users having to switch multiple tabs, multiple monitors to be able to get their job done, it's really that disconnected data for it. So as we explore and dive a little bit deeper into why customer service experiences are so common, really what it comes down to is there's a lot of different ways customers are contacting you. There's a lot of different ways that organizations are reaching out and wanting to get support. And so when we think about live chat or social media, email, SMS, voice, the voice is one that we all have used and probably leverage and continue to leverage. That's not going away. But as we build the other channels on top of it, certainly it's that fragmented systems. Ultimately, from a data perspective and from a systems perspective, it's not uncommon for someone to have a live chat platform, to have a different email platform, to have a different voice platform, and then, of course, having to monitor social media for it. So multiple tools, multiple inboxes. If you're opening different applications to do different things, that's really what we're here to do, is to showcase some of the features and functionality that are available for you, where you don't have to to continue to do that anymore. One of the other pieces that's important here is the swivel chair component. Swivel chair is something that has really taken a backseat maybe over the last couple of years. If we go through technology overall, a couple of years ago, a lot of us, pushed towards the online hybrid like working, where we're in a variety of Teams meetings or other online meeting platforms. And we've put really some of those other technology pieces kind of to the back burner. And so when we think about the swivel chair piece of it, it's not uncommon for someone to answer a phone call and then have to open up their CRM or open up another application in ERP to actually go ahead and gather that data. It's not uncommon for someone to receive an email into their Outlook inbox and then have to look it up and then copy and paste and bring that information over. And so really that's where some of the poor customer service comes from. As we move into the self-service portion of it, the self-service portion I think is really key, is how do we leverage self-service to help with some of that experience? And so Chris, as I wrap up here, I'd be interested in your feedback a little bit, but from a self-service perspective, this is where consumers can call in, really get their answer without having to talk to a human. And so certainly as we think about that, it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of focus, but one of the pieces that we're starting to see is that deflection rate, right? The deflection rate is one of those pieces of how do we get that answer quicker? The other piece that I think is important is from an agent utilization perspective, how do we focus the human agents to actually do more work, or essentially do more focused work for themselves? The other item to make mention is that customer satisfaction is certainly higher. So I know we're working on an engagement currently that's really focused in on this self-service, taking some of those analysts and actually repurposing their skills, their efforts to not answer order inquiry emails or not answer specific product support questions that come in on a consistent basis. Chris, I'm not sure if you want to chime in a little bit here on self-service, if there's anything that you're seeing as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the really important points there, Pat, but I'll just emphasize them again because of how critical they are to what we're seeing in the marketplace with things like machine learning and AI augmenting the customer service experience, right? So really it's about deflecting the easiest calls. When you have a customer that calls you for whatever your most repetitive thing is, hey, what's the status of my shipment? What's my order? What are your hours of operations? The things that the answer is always the same, or the process to get the answer is always the same. Those are great, especially as your first entry into AI if you're not doing it yet, right? We can use that as the leverage point to say, we're going to solve the most easy case. That gives you great call deflection, which frees up your agents to go work on more productive things, right? You're using your talented resources, the humans, to go do things that are more overall productive for your business, while getting the call deflection off to the agent and letting the automated agent do that work for you. That's where we see the most value in for our clients today.
Yep. And one of the key pieces, I think, Chris, from that is that experience is all programmed in Copilot Studio. So although you're going to see a lot from a Dynamics contact center type experience, behind the scenes is really Copilot Studio. And we're going to dive into that a little bit later here as well for it. So if you're interested in that, certainly you can leverage that skills for it to really make sure that you're successful. So
yeah, and I'll give an anecdote there before you transition, Pat. I'll give an anecdote on why Copilot Studio is such a great investment for businesses. Right, I had an insurance company I worked with a couple of years ago that had an IVR call flow that had 300 separate human recordings. And depending on if you pressed 1 or 2 or 3 on different menus, you went down one of those 300 branches. The time that it takes for a business to invest in such a tool is very complicated and requires a lot of build and a lot of maintenance. With Copilot Studio, you can effectively have a Word document or a SharePoint site that is the framework of where your answers and your questions are housed. You don't have to have a formal call tree. You can just tell Copilot Studio, use this SharePoint site as your guidance for your answers. It will ask the caller in a normal language, hey, what are you calling about? The human says, I want to know the status of my claim. It'll then ask follow-up questions that are intuitive to what you have in your documentation. So the speed at which you can build out new agents, the speed at which you can build out new questions and answers is greatly reduced compared to the old way of doing things. And that's really the main investment that we want you to understand in AI and something like Copilot Studio is it reduces your IT team's investment time to build something while also decreasing the time it takes for your customer to get the answers and decreasing the human involvement of your call center agents to answer those calls.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good. I'm happy you shared that story, Chris, because I think when you look at programming traditional IVR, and we have some next steps at the very end of what to look for and how to get started. But when you look at programming the traditional one, oftentimes it was those voice recordings. And if the hours change or the person's no longer with the organization, re-recording all of those was a huge effort. And so, when we think about text to speech, that's come a long way. You certainly still can record those, but again, being a little bit more flexible and not as many menu options is certainly providing a little bit better of an experience. So as we move into the kind of the typical service stack, the item that I want to call out is a study from Nintex last year was with the fragmented infrastructure costs. So when we think about what that means, oftentimes organizations have gone and just purchased tools. And so they've bolted on specific platforms, they've bolted on specific tools, and that diagram you're looking at on the screen has some of those bolted on tools, whether it's a specific data platform or it's a specific CRM or maybe a specific module for marketing itself. When we think about where AI fits into all of these, one of the main challenges you have is each of those tools have their own kind of level of AI that's available. And how do we bring those all together? How do we ensure that the risk is worth it? And so when we think about leveraging a tool with Microsoft when it comes to Dynamics Contact Center and Copilot Studio, the ability to have one single data governance and security framework makes it a little easier from an IT leader perspective. And so certainly if you're feeling that drain, like most of you probably are, certainly you're not alone. 86 is a very large number. And when we think about what that friction looks like overall, oftentimes it's lost productivity. Something that I can do in one tool, I can't do in another. Or I don't have that view of the entire customer because the report of my contact center is not the same as my report that's inside of CRM or Salesforce or Dynamics in this case. So with that, that's certainly a challenge. The other piece, I think, is that poor routing experience. Oftentimes when we all call in and we get presented with a menu, we're just pressing buttons and hoping we're getting to the right location. And then we don't get to the right location. And then we as consumers get frustrated when we are having to re-explain ourselves over and over again. One of the pieces you're going to see with Chris's demo today is that even if someone doesn't get routed to the right experience, the transcription is going to follow or be available to be followed throughout. So you'll actually see that in the demo from a voice perspective. The other piece I think that's really important from a security and compliance perspective is that IT administrative role. When you have AI across multiple tools, sometimes it can be costly. You have sprawling vendors. You have no oversight. And when we think about what that really means for it is we have a lot of shadow AI or shadow IT as well. So again, as we go through it, this is really the area where I want you to think about this is the problem, and now let's start to take a look at the solution overall for it. So what is the role of contact center overall versus CRM? We often get this question because when we think about customer relationships, it goes hand in hand with contact center relationships. And so when we think about what that means from a Microsoft perspective is we have the contact center layer as well as the CRM, ERP, or a 3P, third-party application kind of in the middle. Our customers are using whatever channels they want to access. And again, with that, those interactions are all programmed with Copilot Studio. So what's really nice about that is with social media, if you have the same set of questions you want to give someone that's texting in or calling in or using a chat off of your website, you can repurpose that. That's the same program for it. And then as we think about where contact center fits in, that's the kind of the integration, and then the desktop falls into bringing some of the CRM and customer data overall to give you that 360 experience. So let's dive deeper into the contact center portion of it. So from a Microsoft experience perspective, Microsoft relies and builds upon 6 core areas. And so as we think about for it, the first one is leveraging some of the Azure experience. Microsoft has the ability to be powered by Azure Communication Services or your Teams telephony solution. And so what that allows for is a robust, scalable solution. Dataverse is where all the data gets stored behind the scenes. So even if you're not using, Dynamics 365 for sales or customer service or FNSC today, you do have the ability to still leverage the Dataverse platform and bring that forward. Power Platform is certainly some of those areas where you can extend and build further. Maybe there's some set of lookup, or there's other modifications you need to be made. The Power Platform is certainly key. And then the other pieces on the right-hand side are relatively newer, right? Copilot Studio, and then some of the channels as part of the contact center solution. So when I take a look at the upper, 2 on the right-hand side, Copilot and Copilot Studio, these are really tools that help your agents. And so Copilot can be used to help with AI routing. In the past, you may have leveraged skills-based routing where you have to program in and say, Chris Driscoll has this skill, so any call that comes in, that's Chris's call. Now we don't have to be as robust from a scheduling. So from a deployment, from a flexibility perspective, a little bit easier there, where you don't necessarily have to gather and record all those skills. The other piece here is from an intent perspective. This is one where when we think about intent, when somebody calls in, coaching and providing some feedback or knowledge-based articles to the specific agent that's answering that phone call. That's really valuable. What that does is that levels the playing field for all your agents. It doesn't necessarily mean that that person needs to have that question or have answered that question previously to have that knowledge. You can surface a lot of that as well. And then the last piece from a Copilot Studio perspective, that's the authoring portion of it. So that is really the power behind it for it. So if you are interested in Copilot Studio or have knowledge on that, certainly that is a very robust configuration platform behind the scenes for contact center. Chris, as you take a look at this kind of listing of I'll say environments, applications, tools inside of the Microsoft toolbox, which ones resonate with you, and where do you, if someone was looking at upskilling, where do you recommend that they focus?
Yeah, so I think you can look at the two separate sides of this diagram as ways that you can focus. On the left side with Azure Cloud, Dataverse, Power Platform, that's really where you're going to do app building or database design. And then on the Copilot Studio channels, that's really more process management and what the customer experience is going to be like. So as you think of how to staff up internally, you're probably looking at different mindsets or different skill sets for what you want to accomplish. Really, all of these things work together because there's building the foundation of the database and the app that you want, and then making that app have a nice, friendly UI. And then there's the user layer where that app is interacting with your users and then ultimately with your customers. So really, depending on the skill sets that you have in-house today versus what you might need to hire for or contract out, those are the things I would focus on, right? It's like, what is my back-end process to build the data stores I need versus what is my front-end process that is the questions and answers, the user experience, the customer experience. Personally, my world, I developed my career on the left-hand side, right? The Dataverse and the Power Platform, building custom apps because AI didn't exist when I first existed. So that's really, you're seeing a transition now where the Dataverse Power Platform is kind of the old school way of doing things at the database level. Copilot Studio now is more of the natural language way of designing things to say, hey, I want an app that does this. You simply tell Copilot what you want, and it will spit out an idea of what it thinks is best. And then if you like it, you can commit that code and make that the way that it works. So it's really kind of a new school, old school as a way to look at this. It'll come down to, what are your internal employees capable of for building things, or, who are you going to hire out to come in and help you with these builds as you modernize your technology.
Yeah. And I think that takes us to the next slide here, Chris, as we think about where we from an RSM side are seeing enhancements with AI as part of a contact center. There's no doubt that AI is the conversation these days, right? And so as we think about how you can capitalize and leverage that and identify some returns, really where we're seeing that is self-service, kind of the intelligent routing, real-time assistant, and then case management and automation. Chris, I want you to chime in here on what your favorite one is here, but in my mind, the one that I think is really powerful is that real-time agent assist. The ability for essentially Copilot to listen or to understand the conversation and provide recommendations for the next steps. And so certainly what that allows is maybe a more green type of agent that doesn't have the experience, or the after hours agent that doesn't get all the hard questions, really allows for a little bit, upskilling and coaching there. The other piece is note taking and call summaries. This is one where, as we think about wrap up and what that looks like for a lot of your agents, this is one where, Copilot can really help with that. Chris, when you look at this, what is the one that resonates with you?
Yeah, so I'm drawn towards that green box there. That intelligent routing and prioritization is really my favorite area because it's what improves the overall quality experience for your internal users, right? Making sure that the calls that are routed to an agent or a human agent, when it gets processed through, getting it to the right person more quickly, it decreases your internal employee concerns, right? They're not going to be getting as many calls where it's the wrong call to the wrong team. Right. It's making sure that the right call gets to the right person the first time. And that just makes for a better employee experience. And ultimately, happier employees are able to give better answers, which then gives you a better customer experience. So it's kind of a foundational thing for me, right? Doing your internal processes and your internal teams makes everything else in your process flow more smoothly. So I really like to focus on that one, right? Understanding all the possible skills we need to build out into the skill routing, make sure that your employees are in the correct skill groups, make sure that we have that Copilot programmed correctly so that it understands the right way to route things to the right people. ultimately, that's kind of the rising tide that lifts all boats for your overall employee and customer experience.
Yep. And we're going to touch on that in another slide in terms of AI agents. But as we think about where kind of the modern contact center comes through, I think what's key from this side of it is the ability to see where agents fit in and really cover that self-service and assisted service overall. So as we transition into kind of that smarter service overall, the key piece there is, how do we measure the success overall, leveraging some of the AI agents that are part of either contact center out of the box or ones that you program for it. So when we think about it, improving the productivity, lowering the average handle time, or improving the first contact resolution and CSAT. So when we think about that overall, that's really the key piece: is how do we improve the experience, and how do we essentially provide a better experience for a lot of our customers or consumers that are calling in overall. So with that, I'm going to bring it back a little bit to kind of the fundamentals portion of it, and think about where Microsoft Teams can fit into this mix. So we're here for a Microsoft 365 conversation. You've heard us say Dynamics a lot. Microsoft Teams is one of those tools where it is a foundation or a fundamental area that allows you to essentially connect in. So if you're a Microsoft Teams voice shop already, or considering that, what's really powerful with the Dynamic solution is that you can use all of that underlying infrastructure. And so when we think about what that means, that allows you to essentially have separate phone systems, but essentially connect them in behind the scenes. You get the power of Teams. You simplify that experience. So if you're leveraging a contact center or telephony solutions that are not the same today, and management is a pain, when we think about the Microsoft solution with Dynamics as well as Microsoft Teams, they do bring it together quite a bit. The other piece that's important is from a Teams perspective. Listen, we all use it when it comes to chat and communications overall. And so as we go through the demo today, you may see elements of where Teams chat is available, or the ability for an agent to stay within inside of their screen and not have to open up a different application. So I want to make very clear that really they're better together when they're working together. And some of the functionality, little spoiler, is available even if you don't have Dynamics Contact Center. There is some levels of Teams interoperability with Dynamics as well. When we think about Teams Phone with Dynamics, again, you have the ability to leverage, whether it's Teams calling plans, whether it's Operator Connect or Direct Routing, overall, doesn't matter how your connectivity is, but it leverages your Teams resource accounts. And so with that, you essentially can map those and bring those over as well. So from a management perspective, it certainly allows for some success. All right, let's jump into Copilot Studio and how that fits in the Dynamics Contact Center. So as we take a look at a very simple workflow, and Chris is going to demo this here in a little bit, but as we take a look at a very simple workflow itself, the one that I want to kind of cover here for us is that as a customer goes ahead and initiates the customer contact. So that's where somebody's calling in, they're chatting, they're emailing, they're texting in, they're leveraging WhatsApp, or they're leveraging social media. That's the customer taking the action. Once that customer takes the action, it essentially is programmed with inside of Copilot Studio. And so what happens with it is all being done inside of Copilot Studio. So before it even gets to a human agent, which is on the far right-hand side, what's really important is that Copilot Studio has a huge part of that portion itself. So that's leveraging the different topics, leveraging generative AI actions, leveraging different connectors to grab data from other systems or other tools or public websites if it's looking up that information. Once that's done with that and it's programmed to where that escalation happens, then it goes into the routing matrix of the contact center solution. And so this is where a lot of you, if you're contact center focused, this is where you've spent a lot of your time. And so this is where you can program the skills-based, or what happens overflow, or hours of the day. Some of the omni-channel type experiences also come in here. And then from that piece of it, then it comes over into 4, which is the human agent and Copilot assisted. I think that's really key here for it is that number 2 is where the agent can solve and potentially take care of some of those first call resolutions when it makes sense. But regardless, there's always an end, and the end is making sure that the human, has the ability to essentially receive assistance, whether it's from a summary or suggested replies overall. And so that's really one of those powerful pieces itself. So as we take a look at some of the key use cases right before we're ready for Chris to demo, the key pieces, we've covered a lot of these overall, but what I want to just dive into is probably the 2 bottom ones here, which is the custom AI agents as well as the analytics and continuous learning. When we think about custom agents, this is where we can extend and essentially bring other data in. So from a Copilot Studio perspective, this is where we can go and connect to that Oracle database, or connect to something in ServiceNow, or connect to our knowledge base that is published on our website and bring that data in. So essentially from there, we're customizing or configuring those agents. And then on the continuous learning portion of it, this is one of those pieces that we're really at the beginning phase of it. But the ability for Copilot to monitor and summarize what some of those cases are, or what some of those, essentially successful ticket resolutions were, and then actually putting that knowledge in the knowledge base for the next person. Or when we think about coaching and monitoring and some of those pieces, leveraging AI to really help with that, to make it so instead of having to, if you're a supervisor, you may listen to a handful of different conversations throughout a month to help coach and help support. But now imagine that AI has the ability to listen to all of them and then tell the supervisor, these are the 3 that you should look at, or these are the 3 that you should listen into to identify those gaps and provide, better coaching. The other piece here that you'll see, and Chris will highlight it here on the analytics portion, is the ability for it to keep track of the sentiment. So as somebody's calling in, if they're unhappy, if they're very happy, if they're positive, whatever the case may be, you have the ability to route and record that afterwards as well. And so you'll see a couple of those different scenarios. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you from a demo perspective, but as Chris goes through the different channels here overall, he's balancing it out for it, but Chris, I'll let you take the contact center demo away.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. So just a quick confirmation, Pat, you can see my screen, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. So the first thing that we're going to do is a voice call, and then secondarily, we will do a chat. So what I'm going to do is on my phone here, I'm going to initiate an inbound call. I'll put speaker on so that you guys can hear it ring. And you'll hear the agent pick up.
Thank you for your call. Someone will be with you in a moment.
So, and then now that has happened, you'll see that it immediately finds the next available agent. I'm logged in, my status is green, so I'm available. So it wants to connect me to this call. I can go ahead and hit that accept button. And then what this does is it connects me to that human so that it connects the call. What you may have caught on to was there was that brief moment where a digital operator was speaking to the individual. That is the area where we can include AI. We've shortened it to get to the demo more quickly. But essentially, any questions and answers you want to put into that front end, you can do that as part of that initial call answer. And really the goal is to get away from the press 1 for this, press 2 for that, and have it be more natural language. Hey, tell me what it is that you're calling about, and then solving the problem that way. What you'll notice is that the moment that I, as the agent, accepted that call, connects me and gives me a call panel, and then opens up the profile of the person that I'm working with. So in this case, the cell phone that we had listed happens to be tied to Angel. So Angel is the customer profile that popped up. We're going to see billing history, call history, anything that we need to with Angel, just as an overall user experience. You'll also see that I have transfer and consult buttons here. So if I wanted to send this off to another colleague of mine, I could click that transfer button and then either send it to a different queue or send it to a different agent that's available through that transfer function. And then the consult would be kind of like raising my hand to have a supervisor be able to step in and help me. Okay. I do have both lines muted so we don't get cross feedback, but now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to unmute myself and then speak and show you guys the real-time transcription. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I'm pretty unhappy with the experience I've had so far. Is there anything that you can do to help me find my order history? So you'll notice that I've remuted, and then as I'm done talking, it automatically puts in exactly what I said. And you'll notice that the sentiment switched to slightly negative. And this is going to continue to repeat, right? If I had both lines unmuted, you would see both sides of the dialogue popping up into this box. So what this is going to give you is that real direct experience for your agent to know, like if they need to go back and see what the customer said, it's populated right there for them. So it makes life pretty easy. And then also, as Pat mentioned, if I transfer this, it will transfer with the transcript history over to the person that I transfer it to. So that was the main thing I wanted to highlight here from a call experience, just so you guys can see you're getting a real-time sentiment, you're getting real-time transcription. When I'm done, I would click the X and it would close the call. Last thing I want to show, though, before I end the call is I'm going to go back to my homepage and then switch over to this omni-channel ongoing conversations dashboard. Once this loads, this is going to give you more of a supervisor style experience. This is going to show you any ongoing conversations that are happening in your call center. In this case, you can see that I'm the only agent in here in my demo environment. You can see that Angel is the customer, right? It knows who I'm talking to over in that other tab. It knows that my status is active. I'm actively on a call. Angel is slightly unhappy, and it is a voice call. So all that appears here. If you have a large team of agents all working at once, you would see a full list here of all of those active calls. It'll show you people that are in the active stage, in the ready stage, in the wrap-up stage. Are they on a voice call? Are they monitoring chat? Those kinds of things. They'll all be visible to you right there. So you're getting real-time analytics in here at the supervisor level, as well as getting real-time feedback on the quality of the call if you're the agent who's having that call. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and hang up on my cell phone, and I'm going to let this call end. You'll see that it shows that the call has completed now, and then I can hit the X here and close that conversation. And what this is going to do is it's going to store and save all of my notes and then attach that to the customer profile for the history with Angel. If I were to then go back in and look at Angel's profile, I would then see that overall call history. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to show. You'll notice that now that my call is over, I'm back in the ready status. While I was on that call, I was moved into do not disturb. For the voice channel, we typically configure it where you can only handle one voice call at a time. But now what I'll do is I'll move my screen over, and now you can see I've got two windows open. I'm now going to simulate a live chat between these two windows. For the chat experience, if you wanted users to be able to do multiple chats at once, right? If your agent can handle 3 or 4 chats at once, that would be a control that in the system settings. But I'll go ahead and just use this chat function. What it's going to do is try to figure out who I am, what it is I'm asking about, those kinds of things. So I'll let this get loaded here. I might need to refresh this page to get it to pop up. Cool, it went. So you can see that we've got some pre-programmed agent prompts. It just wants to know what I can help with. I can start with a simple one. What are your store hours? Right. It's going to realize I'm asking about hours, and it wants to know where I'm located so it can give me appropriate hours tied to that. So I'll just put in a random zip code. It triangulates to the closest store. In this case, it gives me an address for a spot in Pennsylvania, and it's going to tell me what those store hours are, right? And I can actually see that this is localizing it to my time. So it's giving me, my computer's on Central Time, the location is in Eastern Time, so it's adjusted those hours by 1. Let's say that that's not enough and I want to talk to a human. I can just tell it, connect me to a human, and it's going to understand that request. It'll tell me that it's transferring me, and then you'll see over on my live window where I'm in as an agent, it's now going to, similar to the voice call, pop up that prompt. So you can see here, I'm now getting a chat from a web visitor. The prompt did not ask me for an email, a phone number, or a customer number, so it doesn't know who I am. So this is not a connected chat. It is simply just a chat with a generic visitor. And I'll show you how we can connect that in a moment. But so from here, I can go ahead and click the accept button. And then very similar to the voice experience, I'm now going to have that chat available to me here. And let me see if I can get that to minimize. Nope. Okay, bummer. We'll have to just deal with this slightly broader. But you can see here that we have the ongoing history of what has taken place so far in the web chat, and now I can start communicating here. How can
And Chris, one of the pieces as you're typing in, one of the items that I find valuable here is that conversation summary that's at the bottom. So that way, if there's a long-standing conversation back and forth, Copilot's going and actually generating that summary for the agent. And so the same thing would happen if it gets transferred. So, with your voice, you didn't have that history, so we didn't necessarily see that. But in this one, we do. And so with that, it's a pretty quick way for an agent to be, have that next step right away for them.
Yep. Yeah. Great call out there, Pat. And yeah, so you guys can see I scrolled through so you can see a little bit of that detail. So it is pulling in an accurate summary of what has happened. So now that I'm in that experience, as the agent, I can communicate with the individual. I can ask, how can I help you? You'll see that pops up over here. I'm trying to find your location and the address doesn't match. Oops. This is frustrating. Notice I'm using a keyword that's going to make this thing turn to slightly negative on the sentiment analysis, right? It'll see that this is frustrating and realize that that's a problem. So now it's going to pop that up and warn me that this person's not happy. I'm sorry to hear that. I'll do my best to help, right? Whatever your normal call back and forth is going to be. You can do all that. And then let's just say that things are good. I can say, that was so helpful. Thank you so much. Right. That is going to flip that sentiment back to slightly positive. So I usually show the negative ones because those are easier. I want to make sure we get some positive in there as well. But you can see how the back and forth is going. If I make this full window again, what I can also do now in this larger conversation, again, I have transfer, I've got consult, I've got different things I can do. I can also do this select from a list of replies. So I can have pre-baked answers to specific kinds of questions. The all would be a list that are available to every user in the company. The personal would be ones that I have built for myself. So these can basically be like your clipboard of ready to go answers. If I click on something, it will automatically paste it in there. I can then add some text and then send that, right? So it gives me the ability to add my own edits after I've chosen a pre-programmed answer. I can also use Copilot. So if I grab the Copilot here, it'll give me a summary. And then I can also use the knowledge articles over on the side of my screen. So if I were to open up the knowledge base, this is going to do a knowledge search based on the conversation that I'm having. I can use that, or I can use the Copilot button here so that I can leverage all of my internal AI resources. I can ask it a question. It will give me an answer. I can then give that answer to the individual whom I'm speaking with. It allows the human to be in the loop and filter the content that gets presented. It makes your end users more efficient because they can get answers even if they haven't had years of experience. Maybe it's the first time they've had that problem come up. They can still quickly use Copilot to gain that answer, understand it, and give a response back to the customer. Other things I can do here is as I'm interacting with the customer, if I ask, can you please share your name and email, right? That would give me enough content to then go look that person up. So in my search box, I can go do a search for them. I can find that Chris Driscoll who I'm speaking with. And then this is going to now update the overall profile here. You can see there's my work email. So I now have a full profile that lets me know recent cases with Chris, recent history as well, all the chats that we've had. So it gives us a good ability to use that chat to find the person, link to that person. And then this potentially also helps when we go into the knowledge base or into AI to have those conversations. And so with that, when I'm done, I can use the end chat function. So I'll go ahead and click that end chat. What that does is then it's going to show that the chat is completed over on the user's screen, and it's going to give them a summary I'll just scroll through this window really quickly. Obviously, you would typically only ask 1 or 2 questions in this chat. We just have every possible different kind of question here, so you can see that whatever your business's preferred formatting is for a post-chat survey, you can ask any style of question you want there and get any kind of feedback. So lots of options there. Once that is submitted, it then goes into a survey result that then ties into analytics that you can run to validate the successes of your team and how they're doing interacting with customers. The last thing I'll show on this interface before handing it back over to Pat is I've got this little Teams icon right here. So if I pop that open, what you'll see is I've got the Teams chat experience from my business embedded into the Dynamics interface. So we talked about doing consults and transfers for voice and chat calls. I can also just use Teams chat to ask a coworker. So if I do a new connected conversation, it will link that Teams conversation to the customer case that I'm working on. So it's all just one Microsoft experience. I can live in one singular window. I don't have to jump between different systems. So it just kind of makes things easier for your end users to put it all on one screen. Avoids that swivel chair. So with that, I'll end the demo and let the team take back over.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. As you went through that, one of the pieces that resonated with me was just how, and I know you had to bounce to that second screen for playing that customer chatting in, but all of the data and details that came in and were right on one screen for that agent. And so certainly behind the scenes, asking the questions, summarization of it, AI is at the forefront when we take a look at a solution like this. We did get a question, inside of comments. We'll come back to it in a few minutes, maybe, Chris, when we go to Q&A, but around licensing. So everyone's favorite topic for it. So we'll revisit that at the very end during the question portion as well. But when we think about what Chris demoed, right? And I think this is a good summary here of where we think about where this fits in and how you can leverage these tools overall. There's a lot of different things, on the screen. So when we think about, the different pieces, the first thing here is we're taking a look is if we walk through the steps, right? The first thing was that, we called in, right? And we chatted in. Then from there, depending upon the routing experience, it went ahead and chose the appropriate routing portions of it. But specifically for it, there was that question and answer portion of it using Copilot Studio. Like Chris mentioned, from a demo perspective, for the voice, we minimize that as much as we can, because obviously, of course, as we're demoing it, we want to show the full start to finish type of solution. And sometimes when you take a look at those voice-enabled solutions, there's a lot of different questions and program that can happen. Where Chris spent most of his time.
Yeah, one thing I want
Chris.
to add there, Pat, when we're talking about voice, and in my demo, we got it to a human as quickly as possible. There's a lot of small businesses where your bread and butter is your human experience, and you don't want to cut the human experience because it'll diminish your customer's experience with your business. So we still see a vast majority of our smaller and medium-sized clients wanting to minimize the amount of that agent response and just getting to a human as quickly as you can. So just know that that's still an option, right? Knowing that your special sauce is your human touch. We don't want to diminish that where it's valuable for you.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good call out. When I think about my positive experiences, whenever I call in, generally it's when I can get to a human that's helpful. Occasionally, I have a very positive experience with an AI-based agent or bots, as long as I get the responses that I choose and that match what I'm looking for. So even when you went through the chat, if the hours weren't what you were looking for, the ability to escalate out relatively quickly was certainly key. So where Chris spent most of his time was inside of the agent experience portion of it. So when we think about what that looks like, that was that dashboard, on the screen. But again, these are all the tools essentially working together. So you see Teams on here, you see Copilot, you see Copilot Studio. And so certainly all of these tools work together to really build a really neat experience. One of the questions we get here as we're transitioning here for us is, as we think about where to start. So before you even start to configure, portions overall, where do you start? And so when we think about an IVR, voice response solution or system, these are just some questions that I always like to ask whenever we, begin a conversation. What are your goals? What's the target audience? What type of tasks and inquiries are the IVR going to handle? Much like when you build a workflow or build any automation, or maybe you're starting to evaluate building a Copilot Studio agent overall, some of this is you need to have the documentation ahead of time. You need to have the requirements identified. And so these are really just some really good questions that help steer and drive, what you're looking for overall. What are some of those KPIs? What integrations are you looking for? If you happen to be in Dynamics, you got a leg up. It's a little bit easier, but it's not impossible. You can bring this solution into, Salesforce, or, into a homegrown CRM application if you choose, or, look up data, outside. If it exists in an Oracle or other, data sources, you can bring that information in.
I want to call out ServiceNow also, Pat, since you mentioned Salesforce. One thing that's really important to highlight, the call experience and the chat experience that I showed today, that is a product for Microsoft called Dynamics 365 Contact Center. It natively stands on top of the Dynamics 365 customer service module of Microsoft's CRM product, but it also natively connects to Salesforce and to ServiceNow. So Salesforce or ServiceNow can still be your main sales or customer service tools. The Dynamics 365 Contact Center can become your voice and chat agent that sits on the front of it. When it screen pops, it will screen pop to your Salesforce customer, or it will screen pop to your ServiceNow case. All it's pre-built. We go in and we connect it to your environment, and it works.
Yep. Yeah. So I think from the piece of it, again, the programming itself is, as we think about Copilot Studio, certainly there, but those other tools can come in, right? You don't have to all be in, Microsoft solutions. So yeah, it's pretty neat to see how some of those solutions can work together, and how that experience is really at the forefront of these types of solutions. And then the last item I think that's important is, how do you gather that feedback? When we think about, configuring an automation or configuring an AI tool overall to help communicate and drive some of those, customer satisfaction, how are we going to review that feedback? What does that look like? How do we manage that going forward itself? Oftentimes, your contact centers you may have in place today have been around and been in place for 10 or 15 years. And so they haven't been updated. But as your customers are changing, or as your service offerings are changing, how do you ensure that you're improving and basically, modifying and updating the IVR appropriately? So Chris, before we move into kind of the what's next portion of it, before you start any of these conversations or configuration portions of it, is there a question here that's missing, or is there a specific thought you want to share with the audience?
No, I don't think I have anything additional to add. I'll call out that the most repetitive thing on this screen is IVR. Mm-hmm. Right. So thinking about what the human experience is when interacting with the bot, that IVR layer really becomes that human computer interface, right? Your customer is going to call in, they're going to interact with that IVR. So understanding the kind of experience you want to give your customer before you get into this project is really important. It will determine the way that you have your internal employees build it, or the way that you instruct your consultants to come in and build a tool for you, right? Identify the vision of what you want the human experience to be, and then build to that with the technology. I think that's the real key here. So I'll leave you guys with that.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. And so as we take a look at kind of what's next from that side of it, if you're, interested, and this was something that you're, thinking about, this would be interested to kind of go through, feel free to stop by the booth next week, 600. You'll see it's a large booth from that side of it. And so with that, as we think about Dynamics Contact Center Proof of Value, kind of just making sure that, we're identifying and discovering what's available, designing a solution, proving and validating it out, and then essentially building the roadmap You don't have to start with all your channels. You certainly can start with voice first if you're at end of life of your current solution, or the contract is up. You can certainly start with voice overall and then grow into the rest of them. Or you certainly could do all of them here as well. So please feel free to reach out to myself or Chris for it. Our contact information, has been in the slide deck. So feel free to pause it. Otherwise, if you go to where you registered, you also see our contact information there as well. So with that, as we transition into kind of the Q&A time, just want to thank you for your time. So Ella, as we want to go ahead and transition into the Q&A.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, gents, for this wonderful walkthrough and demo. To everyone joining us on the live stream, thank you so much for being here. We're wrapping it up shortly. Again, we invite you to visit RSM booth to rub elbow, say hi personally to Pat, and it's booth 600 at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference at the Exhibit Hall. If you don't have your conference pass as of yet, register now by scanning the QR code on your screen, or go to nextgen365events.com. Use the code SAVE150 to save $150 off on your registration. Apply for the Microsoft 365 Community Grant Program by scanning the QR code on the screen, or by visiting change3e.com/grants. This program is built to support small business and nonprofit with hands-on learning, expert guidance, and financial assistance for M365Con 26. If you'd like to participate in the live Q&A with Pat and Chris, please be sure that you join using the link in your calendar invite. Have a great day. Bye, y'all.